Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here. The controversy over the jobs numbers after those, July jobs number combined with the revisions to the May and June jobs numbers that we spoke about on Friday with Jim Perry. I mean, it was staggering. It's like, what is the point of even discussing these numbers? Why should we give them any currency? By the way, looking at just the historic performance of the Bureau of Labor Statistics when it comes to accuracy, the average revision in the monthly jobs numbers since 2003, so for 2 decades, the average revision is 51,000 a month. 51,000 a month. So again, in absolute terms, the average is either plus 51,000 or minus 51,000. When you're normally talking about a few 100,000 jobs, that's a pretty big margin of error. And of course, last year, and Trump pointed this out in deciding to terminate the point person at the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Last year, remember, they revised down the number of jobs created under Biden by nearly 1 million, the second largest benchmark revision on record. This is back in March of last year. The Biden administration overstated the number of jobs in the U.S. economy by 1.18 million in the year through March, accounting for approximately 36% of the 3.24 million jobs initially claimed, according to data from the aforesaid BLS. Again, big margin of error. So was Trump right to do this? Because he's getting a lot of heat for a relatively, I don't know, non-impactful personnel move. This is he's covering for an economy that's faltering, and this and that is, I guess, what the criticism is. But I don't know that the administration or the Republic is going to rise or fall based on who is at the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And the excuse given is like fewer people are returning the surveys and so on and so forth. Like it's more and more difficult to get people on the phone or to complete a public opinion survey online for accurate polling when it comes to elections and so forth. Well, I mean, if your methodology isn't working, your approach isn't working to get reliable data, then you need to change your approach. Just get to complain about it and continue on providing data that is meaningless, it would seem to me. Let's see how it seems to Carol Roth. She's an entrepreneur. She's the author of You Will Own Nothing, Your War with the New Financial Order and How to Fight Back. You can get her free economic newsletter at carolroth.com/news. Carol, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, always a pleasure.
So this contretemps over jobs numbers, your take?
So certainly, as you mentioned, the jobs numbers have been complete trash for a long time, and it's completely unacceptable in 2025 when we have so many tools, so much data collection that, frankly, most of us don't want to have happen, but is happening behind the scenes, that the government somehow cannot produce accurate numbers on a month-to-month basis. You know, companies that are publicly traded are required to report on the regular, and if they had these types of consistent revisions, they would be held to pay, and we should be holding the government to a higher standard. And if they cannot put that information out accurately, you know, within a few weeks of the month's end, or a few weeks of collections, or 1 week of the month end, then they shouldn't report it. Then they should take another month to get it right, because there's no reason for us to, sweat and discuss and part and parcel and have this information move markets when it is just absolutely wrong. So I do think that it makes all the sense in the world that you would fire somebody who both under Biden and Trump is having these massive revisions. I think the way that it was communicated and the timing of it was suboptimal because it ends up looking political for something that I think everyone, at a baseline can agree makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it's not just though. I mean, you're right to point out that information that moves markets because it's an indicator of where things stand in terms of economic vitality, and so people factor this in the decisions they make. But it's also even for forecasting, government forecasting about expected receipts, government forecasting about expected number of beneficiaries of transfer payments and so on and so forth. So for budgeting purposes, in addition to, actually doing something, I know that the federal government is not exactly accomplished at, which is tracking expenditures. All of this matters too, an understanding of what these actual universes are and the demographics within them.
Absolutely. And I think part of the problem, too, is just that the way our labor force has changed so dramatically over past decades, that has not been, factored into the methodology. The reality is we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 70 million gig workers. We have nearly 35 million people who own small businesses. The majority of those, about 29 million, don't have any employees. They're solopreneurs. And then you have people who are working jobs, and some people are working multiple jobs, and they haven't really changed the way that they look at the numbers and the methodology to match the shift in how people are working today. And so on top of the data collection issues, which again, the government has so much data that's reported to it on the regular, it just absolutely a head scratcher. And to have this big organization where in 2025 they can't come up with better numbers than the ones that they have. And by the way, on top of it, the numbers aren't even real. They put in modeling and seasonal adjustments and all kinds of stuff anyway. So, I think we need to take a hard look if we're going to get government data, which is valuable, as you noted, on many different fronts, that we really need to rethink how this is done to make sense and to be able to be useful.
What are the indicators that you look at when you're trying to get a handle on how things are going, and how are things going based on those indicators you look at?
Well, it's difficult because you try to, get anecdotal pieces of information and tie that in with what's happening with official pieces of information, and you get it from a whole slew of sources. But anytime you're doing data analysis, there's a principle called GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. So the less reliable that data is, the harder it is to be able to rely upon it. I think that before we got this data on Friday, that things were looking fairly solid. There's certainly, I can tell you kind of all the issues. GDP, was impacted by some of the trade to the positive side, making up for the negative side in the first quarter. Retail sales, as we know, is reported on a non-inflation adjusted basis. So you can go through and talk about all the cracks, but things seem to be doing okay. But the change in the job data makes you call into question all the other data, and then also creates concerns about what's going on in the labor market. That being said, we are going through a transition in labor. We're trying to have less government spending and have that being picked up by the private market. We're trying to get the illegals out of the country and get them out of the workforce. So it's going to take some time for that transition to happen. So I don't think, there's any reason to think that the sky is falling, just we're going through a transition. But it's hard to have those kinds of discussions if you don't have the data to be able to kind of bookend that discussion.
What do you think the AI impact is going to have on the jobs markets and and how it will be felt and over what period of time. And there's so much discussion about this. There was a CNBC piece that looked at the jobs with the lowest exposure to AI, because at this point the argument is that it's mostly white collar workers that are increasingly using AI and so forth. The top 10 jobs with the lowest exposure to AI. I feel like David Letterman. And this list is almost late show worthy. Phlebotomists, nursing assistants, hazardous materials removal workers, helpers, painters, planters, embalmers, plant and system operators, oral and maxillofacial surgeons, automotive glass installers and repairers, ship engineers, and tire repairers. I guess that's good news, but I don't know that a lot of people listening are going to want their kids to go into tire repair and embalming.
Well, you just never know. Everything's shifting, and I feel like I should do a stupid pet trick now.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
But I do agree that I think that a lot of the white-collar workers are going to be the ones who are impacted the most, and it's going to be at the large corporations. I think that small businesses who tend to be more focused on having great employees and not worrying about, oh, hey, I have to meet the latest quarter on Wall Street, are going to be more protective over their employees. So I actually imagine that we will see more traditional white-collar employees not only going to work in small businesses, but probably starting their own small businesses, which goes back to my comment about how we look at the labor force and what it means to be employed and how that needs to be reimagined. Certainly technology is also going to be coming for some of the retail and service jobs, but I don't think it's, AI, I think it's more traditional technology, but that's because of government intervention, continual raising of the minimum wage, all of the additional taxes and fees and regulations that you have to be able to have an employee, that's going to impact some of those lower-end jobs, particularly in retail and services. So I think that you'll have a little bit of a barbell effect. But, I think overall the probability is that AI becomes a tool that, requires smart people to use it, like all technology, and there's sort of that outside possibility that the robots take over and kill us.
Of course, yes. It's not zero. I don't know what the number is, but it's not zero chance. Something else on the investment front, before the robots take over and kill us, something interesting is happening. You wrote about it, which is that Wall Street private equity firms are opening their doors to little Main Street investors. Should the little Main Street investors be wary?
What could go wrong? It's an exclusive club that you can't get into. And now all of a sudden they go, you know what, we changed our minds. You look pretty cool. Why don't you come on in? That doesn't happen, folks. When they're inviting you into the club, it's because the club needs maintenance and repairs, and they need your money to be able to do that. And that's what's been going on with private equity. There's so much money that has gone into private equity over the last couple of decades. There are only so many deals. There was a period where there was very low interest rates, and so you had all this money sloshing around and doing really well. And now we're at a point that it has become quite expensive to finance deals. There is too much money chasing the deals, so those are becoming more expensive. And so the returns that private equity is getting, which normally were higher than public markets because you're taking on the risk of these securities not being liquid and not being able to get in and out of them, are actually way underperforming the public markets right now. And so that is an issue. If you are an institutional capital allocator, it makes you go, do I want to pay these extra fees to put my money in private equity when I can just do this in the market and get a much better return? And so with the threat that fees are going to go away, you're now seeing a push of, we're going to open it up. And even President Trump said, maybe we should have private equity in people's 401ks. I do some work in private equity. I have family members who do some work in private equity. It's not all bad, but it means you need to be very careful and skeptical, and you need to be looking at fees, and you need to be looking at performance, not over long periods of time, but over, past 3 to 5 years, and seeing what that looks like, and just have a healthy dose of skepticism, because when they're now welcoming you in and they didn't want you before, it's not because you're cool all of a sudden. Sorry.
Yeah, that's good advice. Carol Roth, entrepreneur and author of You Will Own Nothing, Your War with a New Financial World Order and How to Fight Back. And you can get her free economic newsletter at carolroth.com/news. Carol, thanks as always.
Always a pleasure.
And she joined us on the Turnkey.pro answer line.
There's only one radio show in Chicago talking about today's biggest stories and telling you what they really mean. That show is this one, Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, The Answer.